Not every game is going to stay in my collection forever, and it saddens me to tell you that today I have to get rid of 5 games. These 5 games are wonderful games. They just don't have a place in my collection anymore. Let me tell you why on Legendary Tactics. There is an absolute chance that I'm making a huge mistake here, and feel free in the comments to let me know if you disagree with me, but all of these are games that just haven't landed with me. There's a time and a place for every game. Fortunately, once a game no longer has a place on your shelf, you can trade it into this video sponsor, Noble Knight Games. They take trade-ins for cash or for credit, and then they have new and out-of-print games. So feel free to check them out. One reason I hesitate to make this video is that you might change your mind down the line about a game that you decided to get rid of. Case in point, when Settlers of Catan first came out, I originally dove right in, I loved it, I thought this is great, this is an amazing game, let's try it, and it didn't land at all with the people I played with. And for about 20 years I put this one on the shelf because it just didn't have a place. But recently, I got my family together and we started playing this again. I got a new copy of the game, not that it's very different from the old one, and now it absolutely works in a much less competitive and in a much more fun way of playing. So I didn't get rid of this game, and I wish I had at the time, but the thing is, you can always buy these games back. So if you make a mistake, buy it back down the road. So the first game on my list that really doesn't have a place in my collection, and they're part of the reason right there. This is an absolutely massive game. This is only a fraction of the portion that Gastel, my buddy, invested in this game. And I think the reason it didn't work for me was because it didn't work for him and it didn't work for the group. They had an experience that didn't feel very satisfying. They landed, there was really not much to do, and it just fell a little bit flat. Now, part of this might be because this is an epic game and it's going to take a long time to invest to get where you want to be with it. And everything about this game, when I originally came to it, I thought, this is so cool. Look at all this stuff, the Planetopedia, the ship books, so you can work your way through and develop different technologies, and you've got this collection of sleeves, and I mean, the minis themselves, like, it's just absolutely gorgeous. But it's a game that when I first played it, I thought, meh, it was okay, but I didn't feel myself get immersed into the game. And so because it didn't work for my friends, and because it didn't work for me, and because the game is so incredibly massive and detailed, I think it's one that I need to pass on. The next game on my list is one that I'm really torn about. Gosh, you're gonna start to think that all the games I want to get rid of are just the big heavy ones. That's not the case. My number 1 game is actually quite small. But Gloomhaven is a game that when the system first came out, I thought, how cool, I love it. And all my friends bought the game, and I never needed to own a copy because I would always go and play it at their houses. The problem with a game like this is that when your friends move on from the game and start playing Frosthaven, and if you're not really invested in the same group of people for a huge series of missions, then the game will just end up sitting in your cupboard collecting dust. So for me, that's a problem. However, I still really enjoy the game and I like the game system. But all I need is Jaws of the Lion. So for me, look at the difference in retail that this one takes up. It's tiny. I mean, everything I want is here, and this has the storybook involved with it. So if you want to get the game set up quickly, there you go. Your map is already set up. Completely done. And for me, there's a ratio of the amount of time it takes to set up a game, the amount of enjoyment you get playing the game, and then the amount of teardown and packing up. And for me, in the original Gloomhaven, the ratios are off there. In this game, I think the ratios are there. And there's enough of the game that I still feel like, hey, I remember those rules, and I remember where my character was at. But unfortunately, Gloomhaven, I think I just ran out of steam on that one. So the next game on my list is one that I played with a group of people, and it's a legacy game. And one of the big problems with legacy games is once you play them, they're done. I thought this game was the exception. The game is Pandemic. Now, I don't actually have Season 1 with me. I think I left it up at a cottage with the intention of playing it. And the problem is, because the board has been customized and because I had an experience with a group of people, I don't feel like I can share that board with other people, so I'm always going to come back to Pandemic the original. This to me is just a really, really great game, and I don't need all the add-ons of the Legacy Season 1 and all the additions and the changes to the board. And if I were going to get together with the same group that I did before, I would play Season 0 or Season 2. So for me, Pandemic, once you're done with those Legacy boxes, unfortunately, I think it's time to pass them on. Now, it absolutely pains me to include the next game on the list because I have nothing but the utmost respect for the game designer. Cole Worley's incredible, and Kyle Farron's artwork is incredible. And just because this game doesn't have a place in my collection doesn't mean that it's a bad game. This is one that I looked forward to for a very long time, and when I got the game, I think my biggest problem was that I was comparing it to Root. And Root was a game that just felt perfect in every sense. There was all kinds of strategy. It wasn't too difficult to get into as long as you did it one faction at a time, or if you had somebody along with you who knew what they were doing. And Root just felt like a super compact game that just had an explosive amount of content in it. So when I played Oath, I was expecting an absolute masterpiece. And for some of you, it may actually be that masterpiece. There's a beautiful neoprene board in here. Like, this is just, when you roll this out the first time, you just think, okay, that is super cool. You got your different locations that you're working through. But for me, the game felt a little bit forced, and I never really got in sync with all the synergies and the characters. And perhaps this is just an instance of me not investing enough time in a game. But this was also one that, though I loved everything about the way it looked, its premise, it just didn't land with me. So I'm so sorry, Oath, but I'm afraid that you might have to go to make room. That being said, Arcs is an absolutely incredible game, and that's a game that's going to stay on my shelf. So Arcs and Root, just absolutely genius games. So I'm genuinely interested. If you had a really good experience with Oath, please tell me why. There's one game that has never been in my collection, and probably never will be. And despite being the best game of all time on Board Game Geek, this doesn't appeal to me. One, I'm not into Euros. I find it a lot more complicated than it looks. It usually takes at least 2 hours. It's a route building game, but personally I prefer Power Grid or Ticket to Ride. They're a lot more accessible for all the people I play with. The rules in this are a little bit idiosyncratic. So for example, iron can be used anywhere, but coal must be connected to be consumed. I'm not sure why that is, but the theme falls flat for me. Maybe I'm not really an Industrial Revolution guy. I find the game a bit fiddly, and with so much strategy it can lead to analysis paralysis for some players. And in a 4-player game, you could be first in one round and last in the next, which means you have 7 turns in between. So I don't really want to wait around for 10 minutes for my turn. I find the components pretty dull. Cubes, Ziploc bags. Frankly, I find these cubes to be cliche. I mean, this is a borrowed copy from my friend Gastel, and you can see that it's almost brand new. Hasn't worked for him either. So why is this the greatest game in the world, according to Board Game Geek? I'm asking the question honestly. Please tell me, what am I missing about this game? Why is it so good? So let me know in the comments which games you're planning to get rid of, even if they're great games, because so many of these are wonderful games. And in the meantime, get out there, get gaming, and be legendary.